All right. Well, this is Scott Badeau. I appreciate everybody joining today. We have a very special presentation from Jason Kaufman around AI prompt creation, curation, management, and sharing. I think this is a perfect topic to sort of lay on top of the previous sessions, which you can get by going to scottbadeau.com/KM best practices, going back to our, let's see, July 12th session, where Dr. Michael Wu talked about, a high level overview of how generative AI works. That was definitely one of the most popular sessions I've hosted thus far. And then we did a 201 session around sort of how certain subtopics specific to knowledge management may work. And then the last one was pretty interesting, where we had people sharing tactical implementation techniques that they've deployed or ideas that they're thinking about deploying. So if you do want that past list of recordings, I will put that in the chat. With that, I'll just pass it over to Jason and let him take over the presentation. And then, similar to the past, if we can hold the questions till the end, and then sometimes your question may be answered later in the presentation. But then, in addition to questions, we'd love to have a discussion at the end around what your opinion or your company is doing in these similar topics. So Jason, would you mind introducing yourself? I'm sure most of the team knows you, but that would be appreciated if you can start with that.
Absolutely, and thank you so much, Scott. I know it's been a little while since you and I last spoke, but really excited to present to this group what I've learned about generative AI, my background in knowledge management, and how it's kind of led me in my business to where we are today. Just a little bit of background. I've been a technical writer, knowledge manager, and consultant for over 20 years. I founded my company, Irrevo, providing a service of content quality in knowledge management applications and technical writing. So you can imagine, when the generative AI stuff first came out, it's a little embarrassing, I guess, but I learned of it on Twitter and on TikTok, and I came across that and immediately thought, "Wow, this is a game changer." This has so many ramifications to the industry that I've worked in and built my business around for many years. So my knee-jerk reaction was fear, a little bit, I'll be honest. But as I dove in and learned more, I saw the opportunity to leverage it as a tool. And the more I dove in, the more I learned, the more I realized how this was going to benefit and impact us as knowledge managers and technical writers. So I'm really excited to share with you today what I've learned. Scott, I don't know if you've enabled screen sharing just yet, but I'd like
Oh
to
yeah, I'm
share off.
sorry. Give me a second.
Yeah, of course.
There you go.
So yeah, it's great to be able to, talk to my people, present to knowledge managers, and this is a topic area that's near and dear to my heart, and I'm definitely excited to share with you everything that I've learned. So let me go ahead and hide this. All right, you should be seeing my screen at this point.
Yep, we can see it. Great.
Yeah, so this actually took me. I'll just start with this. This took me a little while to kind of arrive at, and this may be something that you guys have already realized, right? But for me, it was a paradigm shift. Prompts are knowledge too, right? We're in the business of capturing knowledge and sharing knowledge and managing knowledge for our industry, for our companies, and just the realization that prompts are content and they can be leveraged and managed in much the same way as you would any other knowledge base article or a piece of content for your business. And providing that back to your organization and your team as a service is a real opportunity that I hope all of us, if we're not already exploring, begin to explore, because it really will help us as this technology changes and becomes more widely accepted within our organizations. We're going to be uniquely positioned to be able to deliver value from that. So, we're going to talk about prompt curation, management, and sharing. But consider, if I understand correctly, most, if not all of us on here, worked in knowledge management for a number of years. And even though those of us that maybe have it and maybe a little bit new to it, understand the underlying principles of content sharing, curation, governance, style guidelines, archival, all of those best practices that we've been employing for years, and processes and practices that have been refined over the years, all apply to prompt management, right? So I'm not going to dive deep into to those practices, because we're all, I think, very well aware of those. But what I will do is show you the value of prompts and how they can work in some real life use cases within organizations, to kind of show the importance of why we need to curate these for our businesses. So we're going to go over first, just to baseline, some key concepts. I'm sure most of us have, played with generative AI in some way, shape, or form. Many of us may already be using it for our jobs, but there may also be some of us that are not quite as familiar with it. So we're going to go over some key concepts. We're going to talk about the concept of the prompt base. I'm going to show you some of those use cases that I mentioned, those real world applications of prompts. Talk a little bit about risk mitigation and knowledge management as a risk mitigation strategy for generative AI, and definitely save some time for Q&A at the end. So what you see here is just a bunch of logos, really, but these are all various generative AI systems. These are some of the most popular ones that are out there, and they do different things, ranging from image creation to AI generated video and avatars. But primarily these large language models like Bard and Llama, and of course ChatGPT and Claude by Anthropic. So we don't have time to dive into all of these, but I encourage you to go and explore and test these out and try them out, because the more we learn from them, the better prepared we'll be to add value to our companies. So just some high level concepts. Concept of AI intuition. This is really a skill that all of us have probably already begun to hone, but as we learn more and more about these systems, we become better positioned to recognize those opportunities to actually use those for our daily tasks, right? So it's building those synapses to really understand how it is you could bring that value to your company and actually use and leverage AI. Prompting. Just quickly, we'll go a little bit more into prompt engineering as well, but it's really the format by which we communicate context to these generative AI systems to explain to them what we'd like them to do, right? So this isn't Google, this isn't a Google search. It's not a natural language search where we have to be very prescriptive, go and search and browse for the information we want. This is giving it a persona, giving it context of what you're trying to achieve, giving it steps, asking for formatting, telling it how you would like it to perform that task. And that's really the art of prompting. Prompt chaining is really putting these prompts together in a sequence that breaks it down into smaller tasks when you're trying to achieve, a larger objective. And I'll show you in some of these in the demo here how we'll use it to use generative AI to research topics for an article that we're going to write. We're going to apply voice and tone, social media posts, and the like. And so we're going to chain those together to get us the end result that we want, which is a completed article. Hallucinations, so the concept of hallucinations. So just to understand that all these generative AI and large language models are doing is anticipating the next best word from a statistical standpoint that should appear given the context of the request that was made. So it's not necessarily, it's not thinking, right? It's using statistics based on what it's learned about these body of words that it's been trained on, this hundreds of billions in their training models, using statistics to determine, given that context, what word should come next in the sentence. So as an outcome of that, it doesn't always get it right, right? So it's putting words together, but it's really up to us as humans, and that's kind of the next point here, human verification, to make sure that the information is correct. What's great about this is this will help get us a draft in seconds, help us build out parts of a document maybe we're building or data that we're analyzing. It'll get us to the 10-yard line, but it's up to us to continue to fulfill the responsibilities of our role to ensure that that information is clear, concise, consistent, and on top of all, verified and accurate. So human verification. So one of the things we're doing at Irrevo is, we're AI powered, but we're human verified. So those are the services that we provide whenever we're dealing with content, whether it's knowledge-based articles, FAQs, technical documentation, and so on. I don't think there's any shame in originating some content or drafts within these systems, but there's absolutely a responsibility for us to ensure that it's correct information, especially before we put it out to our customers and other stakeholders. So just some recent information from a finding from a report put out by McKinsey. Just came across this actually last night. But, and these stats are going to change significantly over the upcoming months and years, but 1/3 of organizations are regularly using generative AI in at least one function. 60% of those organizations reported AI adoption using generative AI. And I won't go through all these. 40% of AI adopting organizations plan to invest more in AI due to the functionality of generative AI. So one of the things that I want us all to consider is this is a pivotal moment in knowledge management, knowledge engineering, and technical writing. We have a opportunity to take advantage of to be on the forefront of this for our organizations. And I really mean this, that writers should lead the way. We are the best positioned professionals within our organizations to curate this content, to manage this content, govern it for our organizations, and provide a service back to every department within our companies in helping them draft prompts, to helping them leverage these prompts, to hearing their feedback and digesting their feedback and improving these prompts. All of those same knowledge management principles still apply. So the good news is we know how to write, right? We know how to present information, distill it down, complex concepts into manageable chunks. We know how to do all of that. Now consider that what we're doing with these prompts is we're just writing for a new audience. We're formatting them in such a way that the AI system can understand them better. We're drafting them in a logical way, so again, it can interpret them better. We're writing them specifically for different systems that we use or may use that have quirks that require workarounds. Some of these systems do things better than others. So curating these prompts as a service is absolutely something that will help enable us as a profession to kind of manage all this change. I'll put it that way. So prompt engineering, really what I wanted to just show here is kind of the makeup of a prompt before we kind of get into some demos and whatnot. There are a lot of different models out there that you could use for sort of templating these. One is the Tracy model, TRACI, if you want to look that up. But they all basically contain the same set of principles. You're giving, within your prompt, you're giving it a role. You're telling it who it is, right? Consider the hundreds of billions of words it was trained on, right? You want it to narrow its focus right out of the gate. Act as a technical writer. Okay, so that narrows that down, right? Maybe in the insurance industry. That's part of what I'm going to show you guys. I'm using that as an example. Give it the context. One thing that I'll often do is tell it what I'm trying to achieve, right? You are this, I'm this, here's what I'm trying to do, right? And then the request itself. Now, could you generate a report, an analysis, a summary, whatever it may be, and provide that in the format of a table, bulleted list, ordered list, and HTML. Write it in Chinese, right? There's all, or Mandarin. There's all kinds of different ways it could be formatted. And then one thing you'll see is I call this iterative prompting, where you get the result, you look and see what it did, and then you identify some constraints or some changes that you want to make to your original prompt. You go back and revise that original prompt so it gives you the better, the best possible result for the task you're trying to achieve. So iterating on that to ensure the best possible result. And I say, if you need help creating a prompt, ask an AI, right? You could give it the persona or the role of, you are an expert in prompt engineering. I'm trying to do this. Could you write me a prompt that will help me get that? So it can draft prompts for you. So that's part of that AI intuition concept that I talked about. Every day I'm running into a new use case or a new way to phrase things or prompt in order to get an output that I want. And for me, that's exciting. So the concept of a prompt base, it's just a knowledge base. It's a centralized platform designed for managing, refining, and sharing prompts to enhance their effectiveness and so on. So like I said, I'm not going to go into the best practices and the inner workings of knowledge management programs per se, but just building on that concept, prompts are knowledge. If you take nothing else away from this, take that, because the rest will just fall into place. Collaborative workspace, it's an educational tool, efficiency enhancer. So what I'll show you here, we use right answers for our prompt base. So I'll just go ahead and log in. So if you consider the organization, the categorization, the search function, all of those things apply. And these are all prompts that we've created and that we use in-house. So, and some of them I use for demonstration purposes as well. But I'll just show you quickly here. I mean, this is a knowledge-based article. You want a clear title, right, that describes what it is. You want a clear summary that explains what it is, who uses it, what the output should be, and the prompt itself that you could literally copy and paste into whatever generative AI system you're using, and formatting it in a way that makes the most sense. In this case, I've formatted it using Markdown because most generative AI systems can recognize Markdown and it understands sort of the priority and the importance of certain things. Also, leveraging communities, getting your team to talk, opening tickets, saying, hey, I'd like a prompt to do this. Could we modify this prompt? So all of those practices are there for us to leverage within these existing systems. There are some systems out there that are prompt bases, but in my opinion, they're kind of recreating the wheel. We've already got it, right? And likely we're already using it in our companies. We've already paid for it. We already have the best practices there, the people there, right? So you don't necessarily need to introduce something new into that. Just create a new instance, of something you've got, or partition some knowledge or segment of your taxonomy to incorporate prompts. So I'm going to kind of go into some demonstrations here. And forgive me, I got to jump out of presentation mode here. But first, and as this prompt is running, I'm going to kind of explain what it is it does. So usually I'll demo in ChatGPT, but today I want to use Bard. I believe that if a prompt is written well, it should work really well within each of these systems. I tested that out this morning with Bard just to make sure it was going to get the results I wanted. But for each of these systems, if you sort of start to compare them, well, one thing I like to do is open like 4 at the same time, give it the same prompt, have them all run at the same time, and look at the output. And you'll start to get an idea of their capabilities, but also their voice, what they're good at, how they explain things. It's really interesting to kind of dive into some of that. But suffice to say that each of those is probably going to have, be able to perform tasks for your business in different ways. So I'm going to put my prompt in here. Let's see here. Paste this plain text. So as it's thinking, here's the prompt. So you're an expert news publisher, and you're great at staying on top of the latest trends in the insurance and risk management industry. I just gave this demo to an insurance company last week. I'd like you to help that's content reuse, right? By the way, I'd like you to help in researching some ideas for my next expert commentary article. Walk me through the following steps. So what I've done here is structured it in such a way that it's step 1, step 2, step 3. And what's interesting about this is prompt engineering is it's like coding with text. If you've got a mind for coding, even understand HTML, those sorts of things, you can apply that here. It's the same sort of logic, right? So generate a brief, high-level numbered list of subject areas relevant to the insurance and risk management industry. And this could be anything, right? Then await my answer. And based on my answer to step 1, do the next. So this is an example of sort of a prompt chain within a prompt. So I've asked it to give me a list of these subject matter areas. So maybe I'm tasked with writing this article. So I'm going to say, okay, well, let's dive into number 4, cybersecurity. So I'm just going to put 4. And what I want to demonstrate with this is how quickly you can do research and go from that research to a solid draft article. So based on my selection here, here's some current news events. So threats on the rise, ransomware attacks, data breaches, government regulations. So I'll just say 4. I think the next step let's scroll back up. Based on that answer, find 5 recent news articles by respectable and reliable news sources. Yeah, so this is an opportunity within your prompt to kind of define what respectable and reliable news sources might be, instead of leaving it open for interpretation. You may even have as part of your prompt, avoid these news sources. So you can build these prompts out as much as you'd like. Okay, so it says it's not programmed to assist with that. So that's an opportunity to iterate. Let's do number 4. I need to be a little bit more specific. Okay, so recent news articles. So it's going out and searching the web and finding recent news articles on each of these areas. I've asked them to summarize it for me and so on. So a lot of this, at every step of this, there's the human verification component, right? We're going and reading through, we're iterating on things, we're saying, oh, I don't like that source, or I do like that source, or let's take it in this direction. So there's definitely an element of creativity there. And you're telling it which way to go. It's kind of that choose your own adventure, right? So then I'll ask it to go ahead with step 4. Just now, step 4, not 45. So at this point, it's giving me this information in a table format. It's giving me the link, and it's really summarizing the source, headline, URL, and so on. So that's sort of the research component of it. Now I want to take it to the next step, and actually based on that research, I want it to draft an expert commentary. So I'll paste that in. So, imagine this applied internally to your company or organization, right? Maybe you've got an instance of ChatGPT or another large language model that you've built out that is trained on your company's information, SharePoint content, some of which may have been buried for years, right? I think we've all experienced that, the silos there. But this is an opportunity to train these models on your content and then pull similar sort of research or analysis directly from the knowledge base that is all of the knowledge within your company, right? For example, it's like, give me a list of all of the projects we did around this, including the lessons learned over the last 5 years. How powerful is that when you're starting to gear up for a new project in that same vein? So what I asked it in this prompt to do is provide me 3 ideas on different viewpoints for an article of my own. So the regulatory burden, the opportunity for growth, the global perspective. And I could read through and say, oh, okay, well, let's dive more deeply there, or let's just select number 2. So then I said, based on my response, follow the best practices below. I've got a bunch of them hidden down here. To write me an article that's between 1,000 and 1,500 words. So it's drafted that article, expert commentary draft, the opportunity for growth, cybersecurity regulations, growing market, and so on. I can, of course, you've got to read through this, right? Especially if you're going to put it out there as your own work, right? But this is a solid draft. And I think, as a writer, one of the things we often come up against is just ideation, right? The blank page, where do I start? So even just asking it for an outline and then going in and writing it yourself, maybe taking what you've written and put it back in and say, hey, is there any other ideas I might consider here? Using it as a co-pilot. And I say co-pilot because you may have already known this, or you may be seeing it soon, but Microsoft is embedding Copilot into their suite of products like Word, email, and so on, that's actually trained on the ChatGPT large language model, right? And so these tools are going to be embedded in a lot of the, or these functions will be embedded in a lot of the tools that we'll already be using. So then I'm going to take that draft, and then I'm going to ask it to generate an image that captures the main concept. Now, to be honest, I'm not sure if Bard, I'm sure has the ability to create images, but if not, we can throw it over to ChatGPT or Perplexity. Yeah, so it's pretty clear. It's not able to do that just yet. So what I'll do, because I know that ChatGPT can, and you can see it kind of, there we go. So I'm going to just paste the text in there, and forgive me for flipping around a little bit here. And I'm going to ask it to basically look at that copy. Yeah, in the following article. To look at this and actually come up with, and I can ask it, I can say, hey, give me 3 images that might go along with this. So you can select from some. If some of you have used Midjourney, it automatically gives you 4, and you can iterate on each of those to select the one that makes the most sense. So you can see it's creating an image for our article. And again, it's a human verification step. Some of the risks of using this we'll talk about. But we absolutely want to make sure that it's appropriate. It doesn't show bias. It's really obvious in images with hallucinations, right? You've probably seen images where somebody's got 3 legs or 6 fingers, right? Those are obvious examples of hallucinations, right? They're less obvious and harder to find in text and copy. So this is a solid draft of an article that we could use and publish if we wanted to. I'll just kind of keep going here with voice and tone. So I'm going to go back and modify this. Now I'm going to ask it to rewrite the article and revise its voice and tone. And I've said, okay, it's selected a persona. I gave it 3 choices. I could have had it, give me those options, and then I select one, but in this case, it went ahead and selected analytical expository. So let's say, let's proceed with that persona. So I use generative AI to help me research best practices that I incorporate into my prompts. One thing that I did in preparing for this was I went out and looked at 3 different types of expert commentary articles. I did an analysis of the writing style for each of those. I did an analysis of the individuals who wrote each of those and their experience and background. And I had it come up with personas that really well personified each of those that I included in my prompt. Said, hey, give me the option to write in each one of these styles. So here's our new draft. And again, if I don't like something here, I could say, hey, let's expand on capitalizing on the opportunity, or let's omit the intricacies of diverse regulations, or let's do more research on this point, search the web for more information on this from recent surveys. So you could really start to build it all out in there. And this is kind of a popular one, but now let's write the social media posts. Now I've published it, I've got the link, now I want to promote it. And all of this, we've done in minutes. If it wasn't for demo's sake, this literally could draft and get something out in 5 minutes, right? So, and social media posts, I put in my prompt the best practices for creating, and I researched this, but the best practices for creating posts in each of these social media channels, the text limitations, the various styles, those are all things you can incorporate into your prompts to yield better and better results. So next I want to just kind of demonstrate sort of the power, the power of kind of ad hoc data analysis. So one of the things that's available with GPT-4 is data analysis. And you might notice here, this has a limit of 100 messages for every 3 hours. The personal, or I think it's just personal or pro version, I think is limited to like 30. I'm an early adopter on their Teams model. That's kind of a mid-tier between personal use and enterprise use. If you want to find out more about that, you can reach out. But yeah, I found it to be pretty helpful. And I don't work for OpenAI. I'm not on their payroll. I don't get kickbacks, none of that kind of stuff. That'd be nice. But okay, so I am going to. Okay, so for this presentation, I actually created. Actually had ChatGPT create a fictitious data set of survey results for a recent insurance convention. And I had it use names that were all kind of, superheroes and Disney characters and whatnot, just for fun. But just the ability to go and create sort of dummy data blows my mind, right? But so I had to create this so that I could feed it back in and analyze it, bottom line. So I'm going to go ahead and have it analyze this. You're an expert data analyst. I have a data set containing conference attendee survey results. I need your expertise to analyze this data. My goal is to identify ways I can improve the conference experience for attendees. So this could just as easily be feedback on knowledge base articles, customer feedback. This could be transcripts from meetings or JAD sessions. It could be, all kinds of things. But what's great is you can do this now on an ad hoc basis. You don't necessarily have to go into your reporting tool, kind of drill down to the data and kind of interpret it and analyze it. You could put it in here and have it analyze it for you. One of those aha moments, that AI intuition type moments was, when I first put data in here, I was like, well, what should I ask it to do? What report should I ask for? Whatever. And so I stepped back and I was like, I can ask it to analyze the data and tell me what reports I can get out of it. So that's what I asked it to do. Assess the data to determine what insights are possible. And then step 3 would be perform the analysis based on what I select. So it analyzed that data so that I can get overall satisfaction analysis, future topics of interest, additional comments analysis, correlation analysis, and so on. So I'll just hit number 4, session feedback analysis. So it's going through the data right now, and it's going to provide me some insights into that. Now, this doesn't have to be just a spreadsheet. Maybe you've got 4 or 5 PDF files or different documents that are user guides. You can put them all in there and start to ask questions of that data set. Pull the information from these on this topic area, consolidate that for me, recommend 10 FAQs that would explain that with links to other sites that have more information. All of that within this context. Well, in this case, it stopped analyzing, so that's not cool. We'll go ahead and run it again. So, so what I'm trying to demonstrate here is not just the value of prompts or the value of generative AI, show those capabilities, but to highlight the importance of capturing prompts as knowledge. Consider as generative AI use expands within your companies, you're going to get sort of the equivalent of the sticky note, right, in call centers. I'm sure many of us have worked within customer service call centers. Maybe our audiences are call centers, but consider, and having been a support agent myself, been guilty of this, with the sticky notes, with the little bits of information here and there. People who begin to use generative AI within your organizations are going to have their own sort of library of these. So you want to encourage that sharing early on, pull in all of that knowledge so that it can be shared and managed and so on. It's intellectual property for your company. With attrition, if that person goes, the knowledge of how to run that prompt and how to perform that task may go with them, just as it does for tribal knowledge today. So you can see here, it's finally analyzed it for us. It's given us this word cloud based on a lot of the feedback, top 10 words in the session, risk, insurance, and so on, word cloud analysis, top words analysis, and so on. So that's great insight. Consider if you're in a meeting and you guys have a data set and so you've got some questions, you can go and throw that in and do some analysis quickly to answer some questions and move that meeting forward. Okay, so the value of prompts. Prompt chaining. So this is something I wanted to demonstrate quickly here. So one of the outputs that my company does is we put together this Everything AI News, and I call it that because it's almost entirely generated by AI. Different AI systems. Some of you may be familiar with Knowledge AQ. We developed that and have used it for many, many years. But more recently, we use it now for prompt chaining. So I'll just go in real quickly here. Okay, so with Knowledge AQ, it's got a workflow and all of that in it as well, which is great if you've got certain prompts and certain people that need to check off on things. But really what this does in that prompt chain is it's a workflow. It's human tasks and AI tasks. With those AI tasks, you've got the prompts that it performs in the sequence that needs to be performed to get the output that you want. So in this case, these checklists here are, different work products that we leverage it for. So in this case, we've got Create Everything AI newsletter. So this is the process that we go through to create this video as well as the accompanying newsletter. And I think I've enabled audio on the share, so I'll just play this for you real quick. Not the entire thing, but just a sample.
Welcome, this is Shelley Strong with today's Everything AI News, written by AI and human verified by Irrevo. I come to you with breaking news. OpenAI, a leading tech firm in the sphere of artificial intelligence, has unveiled a new frontier in AI chatbots. These customizable digital assistants, referred to as GPTs.
Okay, so I'll pause it there. You get the idea. So just let me explain quickly. So in using the checklist, we have it write the newsletter copy that we publish out on LinkedIn. We have it distill that down into a script for our avatar, Shelley, to read. We have it apply the voice and tone that we'd like for that. We have it generate the images that go along with each of the story segments. And up front, we're doing that research on breaking news in AI, all the way down to the end where, once it's ready to go, social media posts. And what we're doing throughout that process is it's really a sort of, it's a marriage between humans and AI, right? Performing and consolidating and collaborating really on those tasks in order to get the output that we want. But what we're primarily doing is consolidating it at the end, right? We've got all these components, the script, the avatar, the video, the crayons at the bottom, the images. We compile it. So that's and validate it. That's the human component to this. So, oh yeah, and this is Harrison Reed. He's one of our other anchors. Just popped up.
Store.
So building an AI prompt management program. So kind of trying to show you, the value of the use of some of those prompts. Building the program around that, like I've said, is knowledge management 101, right? It's capturing, storing, sharing, building those communities, transfer, improvement, culture, all of those come into play. So what I would encourage is if you're not already doing it, maybe task somebody on your team or start sort of a committee, start investigating how you might be able to sort of carve out something in a knowledge-based system or a content management system maybe you're already using, and start to capture those, if not just for your own team, to become experts on that. Structure them, right? Use templates, best practices, tagging, categorization, all of that. And just do that around prompts. And then start to capture other prompts from other areas of the business, maybe your peers, maybe other stakeholders in the business. And you'll begin to build a prompt base that can become a vibrant sort of community within your organization, providing a real service back to these audiences. So in doing that sort of organically, it's going to position you very well for, as decisions are being made about how they're going to move forward with AI, you're part of the discussion. I'm going to be real honest. It's important to be part of that discussion. We don't know in the upcoming months and years exactly what the impact's going to be on knowledge management, on technical writing, on knowledge workers in general. But what I recommend is not running for the hills, right? I'm of the opinion that we embrace it and we iterate on it, and it allows us to up level. I haven't met a technical writing or knowledge management team that said they're overstaffed, right? There's always more work to be done than we could get to, whether it's combing through archived content and trying to bring it up to the current standard, consolidating content. All of those things are now things that we can leverage an internal instance of generative AI to assist us with so that we can get to it, right? I don't think our jobs are going away. I think we've got a new tool to perform our jobs better. One of the other key elements here is as you're building more awareness of what your team's doing and how you're providing benefit to the company, one of the things that you can promote is the fact that applying all of these knowledge management best practices is going to help mitigate a lot of the risk that executives are concerned with, right? The inaccuracy is a huge thing. So human verification, cybersecurity, so writing into prompts and being parts of the discussions to ensure that internal information does not leak. And consider we're already doing that when it comes to customer service content. If we're publishing out to self-service websites, FAQs and so on, that's a real check that we go and do before we publish it out. Is this appropriate for that audience? Same thing applies. So data security, mitigating prompt drift. So a concept I don't think I mentioned earlier was prompt drift. If you consider if a prompt is static and the large language model is continually changing, it's learning, it's being updated, the results of that prompt are going to change over time. So all the more important to ensure that the prompt is being kept current, it's being revised. What's great is you have a revision history and so on. But it mitigates that risk of those prompts becoming stale and having those assets, become, just background noise in your prompt base. And addressing bias and fairness, you can write into your prompts guidelines on how it should and should not behave for many things, but including having it be sensitive to bias and fairness. You can have prompts that check content just to verify that it does not or whether or not it should be flagged for that. So I think we did pretty good on time. I've got 11:50 right here, but I wanted to open it up for questions. And Scott, I don't know if you want to go ahead and drive that.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. I think
yeah.
you answered the only question I saw in the chat, which was 3.5 versus 4. I think you answered that with the comment about your sort of early free beta access. But yeah, why don't we open it up to questions? If anybody wants to type anything in the chat rather than say it, I can repeat it or state it, verbally. Or if anybody wants to just come off of mute and throw something out there, that'd be great too.
Hey, Jason, it's John Schmay. That was terrific.
Hi, John. How are you, sir?
I'm well. I'm well. That was just comprehensive and really mind expanding. One question I had throughout the presentation, and I may have just misunderstood, was there were multiple times when you seemed to imply that there was some other pre-work done. I don't know if it was personas or other calculations that weren't in the prompt you were showing us, but somehow had some other definition. I mean, is it just the prompt that gives the context, or is there anything else that you somehow predefine so that the prompt has meaning to the system? Do you make sense?
Yeah, it does. So I guess my answer there is twofold. One was I hid some copy. I don't know if you're still seeing my screen or not.
Yeah, we're seeing it.
But just for the sake of the slide, let me expand it here and change the color. But so when I pasted that in, it had additional context, persona types, and so on, right? So that was one way I gave it some additional context there. This, at the end is where I typically like to put in like best practices and, reference materials. One thing that just came out literally a month ago was GPTs, and I'm sure many of you are kind of maybe familiar with those. GPTs are all about context. So to answer the other part of your question, when what a GPT is sort of a persona that you can create, and it's real easy to make. You go, if you have Pro, you need Pro to go in and do it. You just tell it what you want it to do. And they're basically like chatbots that you train on knowledge. So you can upload different knowledge sets to it to give it all that context. The instructions, oh, let me show you. This is, I wasn't thinking of taking it here, but I created Richard. He's our resident know-it-all. He's part of our V team at Irrevo, our virtual team. But you can see he prefers to be referred to as Dick. I gave him a whole personality, right, with a backstory. We'll ask him about a stapler. This is an Office Space, of course, reference here. But suffice to say, I've given all this context here, and this persona is kind of the keeper of our prompts. He understands our prompt library. I can ask him, blew my mind the other day. It's the first time I, referred to a generative AI system as he, she, or him, and so on. But I gave him the full understanding of exactly what it was he was to do in my company. And, the swing line stapler, and so on. So this is the context. So consider if you've got one that's just for style guidelines, right? And you've got prompts that are, hey, help me edit this. You throw it in there. It already has all the context of your style guide and can perform an analysis or results based on that. I think that's kind of the short answer.
Well,
yeah,
and are these parameters or definitions, how did you pull them into the prompt? You look like you were just typing English, but then there's this other, I don't know if it's hidden or background context from these GPTs. I just want to understand how that, just to understand, if people are using prompts, do they need to know what GPTs to apply, or are those automatically associated? I don't want to get too far in the weeds here. I just
that's
what's exposed and what's not when you're doing a prompt.
Yeah, I think it's a good question. If I'm understanding here, it's all about context. In the prompt itself, you can have a prompt that's 3 pages long, right? With all kinds of background information, best practices, do this, don't do that. One challenge that you'll start to arrive at is the longer it gets, the more important it is to structure it well, but and to be very clear about instruction and so on. So it becomes more and more important. But it's also then more susceptible to prompt drift. So over time, it's going to start yielding different results because that models are always changing. So what the opportunity is then is to distill your prompts down and pull some of that context out into one of these GPTs. And to your question, I don't always know which GPT would be the best to go to. So I've kind of given them different roles, like prompt engineer. Jesse's our prompt engineer. He helps us with writing prompts. He's been trained on different models, including the Tracy model, a recent report on eliciting human preferences. All these things are things that Jesse's able to leverage in helping us create prompts.
So if you start with the persona of Jesse, and then your prompts will have context of Jesse.
Right.
That's cool.
A subset of prompts, right? Ultimately, there's no telling where all this is going to go, right? But it definitely follows that certain GPTs would be able to pull specific prompts from your prompt base, and it will be able to tell you what it can or can't do. Even taking a step further, you may have one GPT, right, that can kind of do it all, that pulls out of your prompt base. And you go and say, I'm trying to do this. great. I've got, so what specifically are you trying to do? Are you trying to write that expert commentary? And it already understands your line of business, your role, historically, like what else has been written, your style guidelines, all of those will be part of a GPT that I think will be interfacing with, whether it's on ChatGPT or another system, but internally, consider that Richard for your company that's been trained on everything. That's what I think we're going to have. Whether there's an avatar that pops up, like the old, gosh, what was it? The paperclip. You remember back in the day? Bob, the paperclip, right? We may have a new Bob real soon that's super smart. Some of us may already have this stuff. I mean, it's all possible today. It's just a matter of whether it's been built out.
Well, I can't help but ask, can you visualize support agents using this live, talking to customers? Because there is a bias accuracy question, but how might support agents talking to customers use this live?
I can absolutely envision that.
Yeah, maybe have a persona that does the context to limit, and validate as far as it can.
Yes,
that's really interesting to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you consider all of the data that's out there in our speech IVR systems, right? Just from point A to point B, the customer has an issue on, with something. So embedded in the product, you've got an extension of this AI that's helping there. Going through this sort of chatbot that's pre-trained on all of this, the knowledge, further trying to assist. Escalating to a live agent from that point. We're doing all this today, but it's really incorporating AI into that. If they call in, IVR, all of that feeds into the desktop, that support agent, all of that background, history, the conversation, the discussion. And at that point, the chatbot becomes a co-pilot, a partner in helping to troubleshoot that customer's issue, right? And as you're filling out forms, it can help them fill out forms. It can read what's on the page there, summarize their case notes, do real-time searches for other cases that are coming in, maybe on the same issue, what other people found as resolutions. Escalating that to the knowledge base. So if you consider on the back end as knowledge managers, having this co-pilot feeding us information real time, saying, hey, you might want to create an article on this because people are talking about it in the discussion forums. We're getting tickets to our call centers. And we don't have anything currently in our knowledge base that covers it. Here are 4 titles. Would you like to go through and build one of those out? I mean, that's all of those capabilities are there. It's just they haven't, to my knowledge, been built yet.
Wow.
In that way.
Thanks.
Yeah, of course. You can tell I'm super excited about this stuff. And plus, I've already had my Red Bull. So apologize for that.
Hey, speaking of the old Microsoft Clippy and John Schmay, I got to tell a funny story about a client we were on together where they didn't like the new knowledge management system because you didn't know when it was done searching, because Clippy used to do his little dance and then he stopped when he was done. And I was like, oh, well, you don't need to worry about that. Whatever the 10 links that come back, it's done and it's relevant. So just a funny story from a long time ago. Any other questions from anybody that you want to bring up either by miking or muting off or putting in the... Oh, we do have a compliment from Mitzi. It says, this has been the most informative and actionable presentation about AI that I've attended so far. Thank you. So thank you, Mitzi, and thank you, Jason.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I really appreciate that.
Well, I'm trying to be polite and not ask too many questions, but I got to ask this one. What about people that say, I don't need to have knowledge anymore? Now, I know the answer is you need the right information to manage the prompts, but it starts to look like the context that knowledge managers work so hard to put into their content to make sure that the user understands it and it's in customer language and all those things might be in the style guide, but it feels like prompts are all about context And so maybe that implies a different model for authoring, where all you're doing is making sure the right information is in there, that it's structured in some meaningful way, but you're not trying to write, the War and Peace here. You're trying to just put the right information in,
Yeah.
and then let the generative AI technologies manage the context by mushing some of this data together, so that the whole notion of content starts to morph.
It does. It does. I mean, there's the importance of the role that we play is, twofold, right? On the front end, curating and making sure that data that these models are trained on is accurate and valid and applicable and meets the security requirements. So up front, providing that service to our companies to make sure the training set is solid. Secondarily, on the back end, the content that's coming out still needs to be verified and vetted before it's presented to those support agents, before it's presented to customers or clients, right? So, yeah, we are writing for many different audiences, but one audience is the AI system itself, and the other audience is the output of the information or knowledge that can come from that. There's still going to be and always going to be a need to have that single source of truth, right? The information that our agents can trust has been verified and validated by us, right? Maybe someday there's a point where these systems get so good that it is just valid information. Maybe, right? But consider that these systems right now are as bad as they're ever going to be. They're only going to get better, right? The more that they're trained and so on, they can maybe start to be conscious of, the risks or ramifications for putting certain information out to certain audiences. I don't know, but yeah, in the near term, writing for the AI training data is super, I think, important.
Well, what would you say to people that say, well, all I need to do then is manage my SharePoint information better? What do I need a knowledge base for? The GPT will do the rest.
Well, I mean,
it might be the answer is you don't need a knowledge base, but
well, I'll tell you what, one of the things that I've seen repeatedly with my clients and have experienced, and I'm sure absolutely you have over the years, those content consolidation efforts. We don't want multiple repositories, but we've got them. Right? We've got 5 systems that all do the same thing. House content that overlaps. There's misinformation as a result of that. There's duplication, all of that stuff. So if the worst thing that comes out of this is all we have to do is make sure our information's correct, I'm okay with that, right?
Yep.
And of course, formatting it and all that sort of thing on before presentation and all of that. But if we could just use the same systems we're using today, or consolidate everything into one big content repository, validate it, verify it, structure it to train a model on that, we may be able to retire some of those other systems. But I really believe that, especially if we start to put prompts into our knowledge-based systems, and they become a library for that for our companies, those systems will remain because they're the best systems that include all of the processes that are needed to manage prompts as content. So they'll be sticky in that respect.
It's still arguable that knowledge objects need to have certain formatting, images, things that the company wants you to see, not necessarily dynamically generated through AI. And
Right.
so in many scenarios, you just want to get the right knowledge object in front of people. You don't want to start auto-generating the answers. So that's not really the same as consolidation.
Yeah. And a lot of that comes down to how it's deployed, right? I mean, you could have the AI running in the background of your knowledge base and just helping to present the information that's relevant, the links that are relevant. I mean, much like search, right? But and like what chatbots, some do better than others, right? But presenting the information that looks relevant to the context of who's on that page. So yeah, I mean, it absolutely. And one thing that I've noticed as well is a lot of companies and corporations are looking at this as, well, they're not necessarily looking at it for internal efficiencies right out of the gate. Most of what I've get out of conversations with executives is, you know, we want a chatbot for our customers, for our clients. It's like, wait, before you go there, right? Let's kind of test some of this internally with some other use cases, get it down, get it good, and then start to deploy it out, right?
Yeah. Yeah, a lot to think about.
Yeah, of course. Looks like there's a couple of raised hands.
Hey,
Yeah,
Jason,
please,
thanks for
anybody go
that.
ahead and
Yeah, I have
offer.
my
Kevin?
hand raised. Yep.
Awesome, thanks.
Jason, thanks for that presentation. Really useful. So I'm the lead technical writer at Zoom, and we're actually actively looking into using AI and as part of our processes.
Right.
And I'm just wondering how you keep up to date with everything going on with prompting, because it's changing like weekly, and there's like new techniques and tips that are coming out,
Right.
and newer models, they have different techniques for prompting. So how do you keep up to date with all that?
Yeah.
All the changes?
Well, first of all, I do a lot of research. I have some GPTs help me with this, but if you have access to it, create a GPT that, and you can automate this, using Zapier or something like that, but create a GPT where all you have to do is just say, do some research for me. I've got one that helps scan the web and find opportunities for speaking at conferences in a certain, in AI and content management and so on. So similarly, you can have a GPT that just stays current, or write a prompt, so search the web for information about prompting, prompt engineering, best practices, and so on, and have it generate a report for you. Another thing you could do is, if you haven't heard of it, the AI Exchange, check that out. Rachel Woods is doing some fantastic work, and they have a prompt engineering class that they offer. You could also do some research on different models like Tracy, TRACI, I mentioned before. But the concepts are, like I said, they're all the same. You give it the persona, give it the context. And what's different with the GPTs now is you can take some of those elements, the role, the best practices, the constraints, you could take a lot of that out and put it into a GPT that already knows that. So you can really get down to just, here's what I want, here's what I need, right? And so how to stay current on that stuff, I'd say, use AI.
All right. Thanks, Jason. Just like a follow-up to that, what about just like all the research that's being done into prompting right now? Do you have any tips about following that? So some examples is some like recent studies have shown that if you tell AI to just like take a deep breath, it'll generate a better response. Another research study was like, if you tell AI that you're like in danger and your life depends on whether it generates like a correct answer, that helps as well. But there's just like all these crazy, research studies into prompting.
Yeah, and I've also recently heard that you'll get better results if you're nice. Use, please and thank you, right? So all of those things are elements of prompt engineering. They're best practices, right? So as we build out prompt bases, within those you're starting to build that library of those best practices. The templates that you use for generating or creating prompts, those best practices around, be nice, format it in Markdown, like all of those things you can start to build in there. It was funny. I heard somebody else, another consultant say at one point, I'm always nice because when they're running things, I want to be nice to me. Right? I was like, wait a minute. You're not going to be running things, but I don't know. I hope that answered your question though.
Yeah, I did. Thanks, Jason.
Yeah, of course. Any other questions? Sue, I see you were on there. We haven't spoken in a while. Lots of familiar names. This is great. You guys are my people. It's good to be able to speak to you guys as an audience.
Yeah, it's been a fun little thing to do with I know many of us enjoy being in the support industry or knowledge management more specifically because we get to see old friends. Any other questions that anybody wants to come off mute or paste into the chat? I'll just highlight more kudos to Jason coming in the chat. So thanks again for doing this presentation.
Can Jason share the deck? That's my question.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I can share the deck, and Scott, I don't know if you can share it out with the video or whatnot.
Yeah, Jason, would you mind doing me a favor and sending me the deck, and then I'll just send one email with the deck plus the
Perfect.
video when I have it, done coming from Zoom.
Absolutely.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, just ask if you use any of it. Just give me some attribution. That's all.
Yeah, definitely. All right, well, excellent. Well, thank you again, Jason. I really appreciate it, and I know a lot of others do too. Usually takes about 24 hours for the video to get processed on Zoom, and I'll send that and Jason's presentation out soon.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you for hosting.
Yeah, thank you for coming, presenting.
My pleasure.
Thanks, everybody. Talk soon.
All right, bye-bye.